which will take a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. All right. And then we'll share.
Hello everyone, my name is Jagan Chittiprolu. I'm a founder of Navis Analytics and we are headquartered from Seattle, Washington State. Since last several years, we have been helping many enterprise customers, primarily providing the data and analytics solutions. So as part of this journey, and we have been talking to many business leaders and decision makers and asking them their pain points. And most of them have said that how can they increase the customer value at very broader level. When we deep dive into further, the customer value has been percolated down into multiple functions within any organization, such as how can they improve the customer support experience or product experience or customer feedback experience or any activity that retains the customer or gets a new customer. In order to improve these experiences, every organization has the underlying data to explore, but the data is from multiple systems such as application systems or social media or IoT devices. This is where every organization requires special expertise to have the data analytics practice. At Navis Analytics, we strongly believe by adding value to our customer by building these kind of data and analytics practices. The value add to our customers is a combination of both data engineers and our pre-existing solutions frameworks. When it comes to our existing solution frameworks, we have a combination of both data integration platforms as well as data visualization platforms. By these, we can deliver the customer value much faster so that the customer can continue to focus on their core business growth.
So thank you, Ethan, for the intro video about Navis Analytics and about the plan for Navis Analytics. In fact, this meetup, so first of all, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this meetup. And this meetup, we represent two meetups from East Side region. One is East Side Deep Learning meetup. The second meetup is Bellevue Digital Transformation meetup. So together, combining with these, we have 800 technical data engineers, data scientists, and all kind of technology enthusiasts are representing these two groups. And I'm very happy to be part of this group as an organizer. And I'm looking forward to expand the base and spread the voice of the technology to all the people so that the knowledge can be shared between the members. And today, so far, we have conducted two meetups. And this year, because of the pandemic, we were unable to do many of meetups. And in this 2021, we have a long list of plan to spread the technology experiences from different industry experience verticals. And this year we are starting with data culture by democratizing data and AI from Saurabh Gupta. And in fact, so we are also inviting lots of other invitees from different from several companies. And if anybody feels that they wanted to contribute to these groups, please reach out to me directly, and I can facilitate them to be part of these meetup sessions, and I can put them into the calendar. And let's continue to spread the great voice and our technology deep presence, especially data and AI. And I'm looking forward to working with you all to increase the presence of these two meetups. And So without further ado, I would like to welcome Saurabh Gupta, who is my classmate from Harvard Business School, as well as a good friend of mine. And he's going to be presenting the topic about data culture. And so here I would like to invite Saurabh. And Saurabh, the floor is for you. You can take the floor from from this point onwards.
Thanks, Jagan. I hope everyone can hear me perfectly fine. All
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
Ethan just nodded his head. All right.
Ethan.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Saurabh, and I just love data and happy to be here. Happy to be here and talking about the topic, which is very, very close to myself from the last more than a decade. I've been working passionately about this data, about this topic, about this subject area, and happy to share my views, my experience, and mix it with some of the industry takes, what the data culture means, and how this topic is gaining a lot of traction in the industry, which is such a softer aspect, uh, little difficult to measure, challenges for the leadership, but still,
Yeah.
yes, it does
Saurabh, one
exist.
question. Before
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I did not mention about the profile that you represent, and also, adding two more points to Saurabh profile. Currently, Saurabh is working as a general manager from Michelin, and also he wrote several books on the technology, especially SQL Server and Oracle. And you can find many books in Amazon.com. If you can search Amazon.com on his name, you will find all of his books. And O'Reilly is one of the publishers and who is publishing his books. And also he completed masters in data and analytics from BITS Pilani, and he has been doing the executive MBA from Harvard Business School. So, sorry, Saurabh, these are the introduction that I wanted to do.
No worries, no worries. Thanks again. Okay, without further delay, I'll share my screen. Uh, Let me know once you are able to get to the screen.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
see it.
All right, perfect, perfect. So now the topic of this meetup is, of course, the data culture and democratization of data and AI. And now what you see on my screen is actually a superlative title of what we are going to discuss. But don't worry, we are going to zoom in on each of these topics, the data culture and what are the building elements of data culture are the democratization of data, AI. We'll touch upon the leadership, we'll touch upon the literacy part, and what are the challenges that the leaders in the data space they go through day in day out, and how do they come across, how do they overcome these problems over the period of time. All right, so these are just of what Jagan just introduced me. I lead the data science and analytics at Michelin. Michelin, as you all know, it's a global manufacturer of tire, and we have a huge presence in Europe and North America region. We are picking up in the APAC. And then about myself, I just love data analytics, and recently I started syncing up my interest with the startup ecosystem, especially in India. I love to see the way they formulate their data strategies in the growing times. I've been an author, I've been a speaker in multiple conferences, alumnus of Harvard Business School. High time in my career in 2018, I won the CIO award and at the national level. And then Oracle facilitated me with Oracle Ace title last year. So that's pretty much about me. These is going to be our talking points. Although I love to jump upon from one topic to another because these are very, very closely knitted topics. So it's very difficult to just follow one tone. But over the time, I think you'll find the what's the center, what's the crux we are trying to, talk about under data culture. So first of all, we'll touch upon what is data culture, okay, and why do organizations strive to have a very strong and robust data culture, how to set it up. But then what are the challenges? Culture is just in the air. Then what are the challenges? We'll touch upon the challenges. Towards the end, I would love to hear from you all your feedback, your comments and Q&A, and together we'll try to solve something if there are such questions. All right, so let's see.
One thing, if anyone has any questions, what you can do is just type it into the meeting chat, and then we will answer those questions at the end of the video, at the end of the call.
Thanks, Ethan.
Yeah.
So let's have a look at what are the top asks from a chief data officer. Now, chief data officer is a role which has not been there from ages. Relatively, it's a new role. It all started around 10 years back when the companies, when the large organizations started looking at the data as a strategic asset, and they needed one person who can play the role of the gatekeeper of the enterprise data strategy of the organizational data. And that's what they said, let's have a chief data officer who will be either someone from within the organization who knows the leadership well, who has got a good context, who knows the context, the business context of the organization, and then he will drive the data strategy. But then there was also the school of thought who said the people who are internal to the organization know this organization very well. But if we are looking at the data as a strategic asset, then probably we need a fresh air and we need to hire people from outside who can bring in a third eye, who can bring in a different perspective. So there's a mixed school of thought still, and there's a mixed school of thoughts around the roles and responsibilities of chief data officer. But let's pick up the classical case, what a typical chief data officer does in an organization. So we have a character John who joins a company XYZ as a chief data officer. And in a very simple terms, what the primary responsibilities of John are. Well, number one is to build a data-driven organization. That's why CTO are. CTO is not a data engineer. CTO is not a data developer. His responsibility is to build a data-driven organization. Now, one of the key element, one of the soul of data-driven organization is data culture. Now, John figures out what is data culture. Data
Saurabh,
culture.
you
Yes,
can you
Gagan.
please share the screen because
Is it not visible?
Lost
it is
it.
not lost it. We lost it. The screen.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Sorry, that must be me. I was about to, place the speaker. Sorry about that, Saurabh.
No issues, no issues. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
All right, so I was there that what is data culture? So John figures out that to build data-driven organization, what we need is the data culture. Now, what is data culture? Although we are going to zoom in on data culture again, but data culture is all about if I'm able to use data in my decision-making process. If I need to make sales, if I need to enter a new country, new economy, what are the trends, what are the data trends, and what are the products, what are the CAIs I've been selling into the space, what is the purchasing behavior of those of the folks in that region. This is all the data what I will need instead of my gut feeling that okay, if I'm entering some economy and I just read some magazines, newspapers, and say that okay, let's go in this way. Let should be their strategy. That is the intuition based decisions. But if I have a data driven, data backed decisions, that is what the data culture precisely defines. Now, why do we need data culture? Because of course, if I have the data, I'm informed, very well informed what the data speaks. I'll be able to make better decisions. And then ability to access, the explore and interpret the data. That's again is a part of data culture. But the challenge is in front of John is how to build data culture. Okay, is my I am aligned as a chief data officer, but are my peers aligned on the data culture or not? Is my data strategy quite robust to support data culture or not? Is my workforce, are my people, equipped with the right set of knowledge, right set of data set, toolkits and products to play around with the data or not? Now, knowing all these things, what are top challenges in front of John? He's not aware of the current state of data in the organization and what should be his priorities, right? What should be the starting point? What is a plan of action? Okay, so when a chief data officer comes on board, these are the top challenges which he or she goes through. And is John the only one? Is the problem there in the organization? Is the problem there in the leadership? Not at all. Okay, so if you look at the numbers, and there are multiple agencies who are running this analysis, day in, day out. The New Vantage Chief Data Officer Survey, the report came out, I think, a couple of weeks back, and that shows that there are only 24% of the organization. Their sample size was mostly centered around the CDOs in states, and more than 1,000 CDOs and head of data and equivalent roles participated in this survey. And what they found that only 24% have responded that they have been able to forge data culture. So that itself shows the challenge is known, how to solve it is known, but still there is a missing piece which knits all these points together, puts up an equation in front of you and say this is the solution, and that's the challenge which goes with the remaining 76%. They find success in bits and pieces in few of the initiatives, but if we take the holistic view, if we include the entire organization and ask this one single question, are we data enabled? Probably the answer is no. With this, I've set the context. These are the points we are going to zoom in the upcoming slides. And before that, let's define what is data culture. So data culture is all about better decision making, what I just mentioned. But then establishment, how do we connect the business problem with my data efforts is another view of looking at the data culture. If I'm simply accumulating data and I'm happily saying that, okay, I have the data lake worth, terabytes of data, petabytes of data, that is not the way it works. With this volume of data, we need to extract the value. And how do we extract the value? Once we are able to connect this data to the business problem. So if I do not have the purpose, there's no point in time, there's no point in accumulating and collecting the heaps of data. So the moment you are able to connect these business problems, talk to the business folks, KPIs, what are the metrics that measure the business success? If the data efforts are not able to, make an impact on these KPIs or metrics, no matter what it takes, it's not the data culture. So, or say, let me put it that way, that it's a low level or say low velocity, low acceleration in the data culture, which it still needs some more fuel. Still needs more business problems, business use cases to be connected. And that's how you would justify the efforts that you put in building up the data platforms, data enablement programs, initiatives, things like this. Let's see what the chief digital officer at Merck's has to talk about in terms of the data culture. So what top leaders in the industry, what they think when people have lots of data, they say, okay, I have plenty of data. Now I need to hire a team who can just start extracting the value of this data and insights and making sure that we have the right set of products. We are building an AI team, data science, ML models, and now we have the value. But the challenge is how far, what's the perimeter of the impact is. And they start looking at the data discovery, which is, of course, a very important, very critical step. But then more than looking at what data, there should be an effort in the starting itself to find out what actually the problem is, what we are trying to solve. And if we are able to solve, what is the impact we are going to make? and backtrace that journey and say that to solve this problem, to have an impact on customer experience, CSAT or NPS metric, how can we backtrace and find out what are the data points that we would need to solve this problem? And this has been common across the board, common across the industries. Okay, not specific to retail or finance, whichever industry we go, if we play around, if we start, we're talking about the data strategies, this is the topmost, the input or say feedback that comes in, that no matter what it takes, if we are not having the business use cases, we are only going to invest a hefty amount in managing the data sets, the managing the volumes of data. Moving on, why do organizations need data culture? By now we know that, okay, data driven, data backed decision making. So the analysts and the frontliners who are responsible for taking some decisions from the business standpoint, they get away from their intuition based and the gut feeling based decisions. They have the data in front of them. They're able to explore. They have the data products in front of them, and then they can use this data for better decision making. And then, as I said, build business strategies with data analytics. Now, data, if you are taking it as a support, if you are taking it as something lying on the table and you will need it at some fine morning, it's not going to work. So from day one, and this is how one of the core responsibilities of chief data officers are, that they start connecting with the business leaders and discussion around the KPIs and the metrics and how do they build business strategies with data. Okay, and that backtraces the journey, puts up the milestones that, okay, the data is not managed well. There's no blueprint that connects your data points with the business strategy. So let's build it together. That's how this entire journey paints out to be. And then finally, you see, the key metrics, the top metrics of the organizations. You can improve the customer experience. You can optimize the internal business processes in the supply chain, logistics, in the finance, purchasing departments, and you'll see the impact coming in. The discussions which used to happen, and I remember very early in my career that the discussions around these things, the feedbacks will be there over the emails, or there'll be CSV sheets, the spreadsheets getting circulated with all those numbers, but no one pays attention because we do not know how to join these two things together. So if we develop that holistic view, if we develop that business view, keeping data in the center, that's how that will start creating the impact on the business metrics in the organization. It's very interesting, by the way, because there are still organizations who believe that data is an IT asset, and nothing wrong with it, because until now, all these years, these organizations have been accumulating lots of data and building data products. Perfectly fine, no problems whatsoever. Building data products, but coming it from the needs. So there is a demand of data product. There's a demand of an AI system for which we have the data. We have plenty of data, and then we have a central team doing it. But the problem is you only know what you only get to solve the problems which one person feels. There'll be one central team, one particular, say, bunch of people, group of people who feel the need of a product. They will recite their need to a central data and AI team, and the product will be developed. But that's not what we are talking about. It's not an IT service that you build a product using data. Instead, when we talk about the cultural transformation, the data should be available to everyone and anyone who need this data. Okay, so this is the problem that I was talking about. So don't worry, we have a data team. This is the world we have been coming in. Right, so problem solving with data, what it requires, you pick up a KPI, you formulate your hypothesis, you run the experiments, and then you start measuring the outcomes with the products that you have built. But the reality is, if you look at the bottom layer, you have the data strategy, Okay, you have the prioritization, and then you have two teams involved, which is I was just mentioning about. You have the data and AI teams, and then you have the business folks who come with the domain expertise. Both of them, they go through a challenge. Data teams, they lack the business expertise, they lack the business context of what data is. It's very challenging for them to understand the data, and that impacts their prioritization. They have bunch of problem statements on their table, which one to take up first, no clue. If you talk to domain expertise, if you talk to the business stakeholders, what they will say that for me data is a black box. Okay, I run the business, but I don't care where the data lies, whether it is siloed or I'm not interested in accessing this data. And over the time, they get this challenge of working with the central teams that, okay, it's a very time consuming product lifecycle. They need the products on their table the moment they brief the teams. And what the central team does, they say, okay, now we have a tool. You can have a better visibility on the data. You have the data lakes, you have the data warehouse, so many terms. For them, it's yet another tool. So sorry, they're not going to accept, they're not going to adopt it. All right, so I'm sure you'll be able to connect with these challenges because all of the folks coming from the data world, they at some point in time in your careers, you would have faced these challenges that working with the business teams, it becomes quite challenging to tell them what the problems are. The data pipelines are not set. Okay, I'm not able to join, right? So these are the challenges that business folks would find hard to accept. Now, building blocks of data culture. Okay, so far we have seen what is data culture, what were the challenges of the past, and now we are going to see that getting into the future or say fixing this data culture, what are the three areas that we need to emphasize upon? The data strategy. Okay, so enterprise data strategy of the organizations. How do you balance between defense and the offense of data strategy? When I say defense, that means the foundational elements of data. There are 50 systems who are system of records, who hold the system of records, sorry, and who have, you know, uh, excuse me. So, and who are which are generating the data, but there is no central backbone of this that connects all these data systems together. There is no data centralization strategy. There is no data governance strategy. There are no barriers. There are no systems who measure the data quality. Okay, so focusing around all these aspects builds the enterprise data strategy. Now you have the data. Is my organization equipped with the right uh, understanding of the data or not? So that is the data literacy. And then finally, the data democratization. Is this data available to the people who need it? And do they have the right toolkit to explore and exploit this data or not? That precisely defines your data democratization. We are going to, again, jump on each of these three pillars and find out what are the questions that one should be asking and what are the top areas that as a leader in the organization responsible for data you should be focusing upon on each of these sections. All right, so as a leadership, okay, so now bringing back our character John, right? So he joins as a chief data officer, but when he looks at his peers, they are equally naive on the data initiatives, data programs. Everyone is enthusiastic. We all love to talk about it. Well, we need to use data. We need to set up teams. We need to have products. We need to bring in transformation. But those are announcements. Okay, so we need to get beyond, just the announcements on data and AI programs, and we need to start conversing or using the data. We need to have more frequent conversations using data. So data should reflect in the conversations with the decision makers. I was talking to the team at Looker. Looker is a democratization tool from Google, which they acquired a few years ago. And then what I came to know, I was so fascinated with the fact that the CEO of Looker uses this product every single day. And there's a clear instruction from this guy to his staff that all the reports, whenever there are meetings, they need to provide, they need to come up with the Looker dashboards and talk with data. Okay, no slides, nothing. They have to use the Looker visualization to present what they're talking about. That itself reflects at how the data travels through the nerves in the entire organization, right? So it's not a nebulous topic no more in the meetings that, okay, we need this, we have the justification, I have the comments, feedbacks from different folks. No, we have to talk in terms of data. The third point, which is very, very important, say, for example, as a chief data officer or the head of data, you are absolutely marvelous, absolutely fabulous in data. All right. So, but your peers, right, who at some point in time will be your stakeholders, still do not get it, still do not appreciate the value of data, right? So that is, as a data leader, you have the responsibility of coaching the teenage of advanced analytics, data, and that you get away from the misconceptions that, okay, data is still an IT assets. So this is how the cultural change, you play the role of the change agent as well. Okay, so you tell your peers, okay, and people above you, how do you manage up is again a challenge. So you need to coach them that how the data is a very, very strategic direction in the organization, because your teams, your groups will be working with them and talking to them to solve some of the business use cases with data. And if they do not get it, it becomes challenging. All right, so and you see a famous quote from Peter Drucker, who says only three things happen naturally in organizations: friction, confusion, and underperformance. And that reflects at each and every level. Okay, it's not at only at the employees level, but the folks who are responsible for the workforce, uh, the leadership, they also face the same problem. Okay, so to solve all these frictions, resistance, confusions, underperformance, what all you need is a strong, robust, and connected leadership. So let's see, from JP Morgan, we have a comment from Rob. What he says that senior management realizes that data is the lifeblood of organizations. Okay, so you see the finance organizations realizing the fact that it's not a one-way traffic of data. They just don't get and they start receiving data every single day. But at some point in time, they also have to exploit and squeeze this data out to find out how they can serve their customers better. And what they realize is that what senior leadership brings onto the table with strategic initiatives like data is to promote transparency. Very, very important. It's not just the announcements that, okay, we are going to invest, we have parked this much of budget for data programs. No, that is good, but not sufficient, not enough. So they have to bring in transparency with the programs, with the announcements that they make over the time, and that reflects in the way we appreciate the KPIs, movements with data, the progression in these metrics. I think, yeah. So that's a big statement. How the leadership promotes the transparency on every level. And all right, so let's move on to the second pillar of data culture, which is data democratization. Now, I've been leading the data democratization efforts for quite some time because when we start leading the data science and AI, the challenge is I do not have access to data. I know there is volumes of data which the organization holds, but I have no clue where that lies. Okay, and how to access it. Is it available for me or not? Am I authenticated to access this data or not? So I also play a role of being the change agent and formulate these policies in large organization, in legacy organizations, which are still very finicky about, date accessing this data. So in very simple terms, what data democratization is: bringing democracy to the data. Okay, so making the data available to you, to accessible to all the folks who need it, and give them the toolkit. Okay, now you have the data, but this is the toolkit to explore and exploit this data set. So making the data available, accessible, sharing the toolkit defines the democratization. Of course, democratization has its own maturity path. If on day one, you cannot expect that you have the data, now start generating insights. That will be a tough ask on the day one. But over the time, there's a natural path of evolution which the organization goes through. And at some point in time, we say that now we are able to transform the business with data points. So it starts with very a simple visualization. So there's a rollout on how do you visualize the data, how do you join the data, are you able to interpret simple terms like mean, median, and mode, and aggregation of data points, and going at a level up, are you able to use the products like the one Navis has. Navis has got a products around the visualization and data integration, low code, no code platforms, and how anyone who comes with a low level of knowledge is on knowledge as well, they'll find very comfortable. They'll find it very easy to use the products like Power BI, Navis, Alteryx, and things like this. And that is how you push the consumption of data in the culture and ask them that now you have the data, now you have the toolkit, you have the set of products on your table. Now you can start playing around with the data. No more you would be reaching out to the central team, of course, for the complex product developments, but for your daily needs of data, you are equipped with the right set, with right stuff, right items, and you can start working with the data. That's the democracy. That's how you establish the democracy of data. So let's see what the CIO from Boeing has to say about the democratization of data. And now, by the way, with each and every day passing in, we are seeing multiple success stories of data democratization. And if you search it on Google about data democratization, you'll find several case studies from Airbnb, from Viacom, from Royal Bank of Scotland. They have all implemented data democratization in some or the other way to uplift their workforce and be more vigilant on the usage and the consumption of data. So what Ted says that that you need to find out how you are going to democratize. Okay, what's your starting point? Is it the data accessibility? Is it sharing of toolkit, or is it enabling your workforce to use this data? And how soon you are going to ask your workforce that, okay, now you have the data, you show me the insights. Is it the fair question to ask or not at first place? But yes, we do. So we all know that once you have something in your hands, you need to justify the entire existence of those items in your hands. So need to discover personas, who needs data in what format. You'll find business heads, you'll find business leaders who need probably this data in a rich, fancy format. And then data scientist and data analyst, probably they'll need data in CSV sheets or APIs so that it gets auto refreshed. And but yeah, persona, data accessibility, availability is a very critical to establish state of data democratization in the org. All right, so I think by now we understand that the key pillars on which the entire data culture stands is the leadership who sets the tone, who sets the context, and then you have the democratization which basically expands the perimeter, expands the horizon of data in the organization, and then going forward, the next thing what we see is the data literacy. So now you have structured your data, you have the robust data strategy, you have given the toolkit, accessibility, and everything. But then now John realizes, our chief data officer at company XYZ, that I've done everything. Now why still there's a problem, right? So then he figures out that my employees, my teams they do not know how to interpret data. Oh my goodness, what I've done. So data literacy is a very critical part. Okay, so how it gets defined as is the ability to read, write, and communicate data in context. Okay, so end of the day, when I have these spreadsheets of data, if I have plenty of them, how do I connect them? How do I know that what are nulls? How do I interpret different movements, indicators in this data? So that's my ability to read, write, and communicate data. I may not be the expert. I may not be the best of the lot to work with data to present data in different formats, but my basic understanding, if I throw up a data set, do I stand a chance of getting something back in terms of insights or not? That's the data literacy. And the way to solve it, there's no shortcut. You have to upskill your employees on data handling techniques, plus the awareness on how the data is internally organized. Okay, so that connects back to the point that you know how to interpret data, but this is how the data strategy of the organization runs through. This is where most of the organization fail to establish the connect. And believe me, this is all by my experience. You will have the team of experts very fluent with SQL writing, data wrangling, data binding techniques. But what they do not know is how it connects with the data strategy. If I need sales data, which team, which IT team I need to go through? If I need certain data sets again, how do I access the data lakes? How do I access the data environments? That this is where the challenge lies. So upskill employees not just on the data handling techniques and methods, but also make them aware that how the data is organized inside the company. And finally, very practical point. How do you do this? You have the focus on the data trainings, enablement programs, run very focused workshops. I know it's really a challenging task for the employees to go through courses, and that to self-paced courses, MOOC portals, they're all good. I really appreciate their efforts, but a 2 days focused workshop, getting their 100% of attention of what a person speaks, especially like me, versus 15 asking them to go a 30 days of training and open up a video and go through the understand yourself. Self-paced is precisely I've thrown up a content on you, and now it's up to you how you're going to catch up your understanding. So still I'm a big proponent of running the enablement programs, workshops, and tell them what they need to get started, generate the interest, generate the motivation, and these guys will be up and running. So focus on data trainings and enablement programs. That's how we structure the data literacy in the organization. What Airbnb did in this space is very interesting. Okay, so what they said, we're not going to do this. We are not going to ask our employees to go and get certified on data. They they had set up their entire data university in Airbnb, and they have been, I think they were the pioneers, or they have proposed the data university. I'm not sure of that connect, but still the Airbnb data universities is very talked about in the industry, because that has helped. They have created the persona based certification tracks, learning tracks, and that has helped the internal workforce to know about the data, which was a generic standard topic, plus what was specific to Airbnb. That's how that's as well is included in their codes. So what folks at Airbnb tell me that, okay, they have the great tools that are interconnected. Okay, so that's internal to the organizations. And then, you're going to get educated on how to use them. Okay, how to work with data, but then how to work with Airbnb data, how to work with the data in the travel industry, how to know your customers better, how to get the voice of customers in a better way, how that voice of customers topics insights get connected to the internal functions of the organization. This is how they're taught in the data academy, data university at Airbnb, which is fabulous. I mean, this is the point I was trying to make, that if you know how to play around with the data, good, all good. But do you know how to play around with the organizational data or not? That is what the data literacy, the true sense of data literacy is. And that there are multiple, such success stories over the time. I think organizations, and the beauty of the fact is, it's not just the large organizations. Okay, not just the global and distributed organizations. The latest, the coming edge are startups as well. Airbnb, by the way, is not very old. And if you are aware about the Postman, right? So Postman is the API, company, and they have also set up the data democratization through some of the open source tools, and they have educated their employees how to use the data. Although these both are very, very disconnected words. APIs, you know that, okay, I built a program and how to expose that as an API, how do we test API is what Postman does. But do their employees need data? Probably you won't. At the first place, it's very difficult to establish that connect, but they use the data to find out how they can improvise upon their product, how can they can plan the features in their product. So once again, workforce, the employees, organization have to be have to attain an adequate level of data literacy to work with the data in the organization. All right, so we have practically implemented everything that is required to set up the data culture. We have the leadership alignment, we have the data strategy, we have data democratization, and then we have on top of that, we have enabled our employees to work with the data well as well. Now, what I'm going to talk about next are good to have features, something that has to go in the mind to to set up data culture and keep an eye on how it's going, how it's picking up the pace in the business. The one thing is around the network effect. As a chief data officer or as the head of data, you would have teams who are working with different stakeholders, and some of them are easy go, some of them are really tedious to strike a conversation with. How do you handle this problem? How do you handle the problem of resistance? Okay, which is a very, very critical topic, which critical point in cultural transformation. One of the techniques, one of the strategy that has worked well is to identify data ambassadors in the business who are not the digital natives, who can who can act as your allies in the business. Okay, so and they will be responsible to catalyze your programs or to take your programs ahead and put them deep into the business or sow the seed in the business. Okay, so and this will cause the catalyzation effect, as we say, also the network effect, because the data ambassadors will have an incentivization strategy to create some more ambassadors, and that's how you grow not just your team. Okay, it's not just about having more members in your the data organization, but it's about transforming the data culture. How do you make people aware about the programs that come out of the chief data office, right? So the data ambassadors in the business can help you, can work with you, can coordinate with you to work on the business strategies with data, keep an eye on how the data literacy levels in the particular business unit are, and some of the programs, for example data culture assessment, which you'll be rolling out, those are the things which will become a key objective or say OKRs for the data ambassadors. And this is how the evolution of their data roles and skills will happen in the organization, and this is a trusted and tried strategy with many of the leaders. You see, all right, so these guys, Houston Astros. So Jeff from Houston Astros, what he tells, when they hired an extra coach, okay, in the minor leagues, and what this guy used to do, usual coaching responsibilities. He had the throw batting practice, but then he was also responsible to program in SQL. Would you realize that coach is doing writing the SQL queries, right? But then what they over the time they realized is he became a very good ambassador. He was the bridge between the players, or say these guys, the systems, and the management as well, and that help them to understand the activities going on much better. Okay, and what they need to do in terms of policies, frameworks to set up these groups better. These are the ambassadors. In manufacturing industries as well, we have found that the ambassadors help in the validation of the products. Okay, so if there are data products which we plan to roll out in the business units for a specific region or even at the global rollout, the data ambassadors help in evangelizing those products and create over the time the pollination opportunities, that if there are units and they will endorse the product as well, it can be pollinated to some other business units, and that contributes to the success of such data programs. Moving on, the risk management, which is again not the core pillar, but it's a very, very critical pillar. When you are handing the data in the hands of the people who have just got educated, you of course run a risk of how they are going to handle the data, because you are looking up to them to make decisions, take decisions using this data. But what if they are not able to do the right interpretation of the data? Okay, and the data products, the digital products that they have created, uh, does it induces any point of the vulnerability in the system or not? So you of course run the risk of uh, you know uh, such low points in the system. And that's how I'm going to put, because it's very difficult to use some hard terms there. uh, Teams do say that, okay, now we have taken that much of effort to familiarize on the data, to get expertise on data, but it becomes a responsibility of, again, the digital officers, the data officers, to set up a team who keeps an eye on what data digital interventions we are introducing in the processes. Are they exposing any vulnerable points or not? Are there any ethical issues associated with this thing or not, with these initiatives or not? And then this is at the product, this is at the system level. If you're impacting that large, at that large scale. But then at the individual level, when we talk about the curse of data democratization, this is one of the curse, as we say, who needs the data and why? If you keep on asking to everyone, you're going to lose the trust. And if you do not ask this question, then of course people will not come forward, and they'll do whatever they want. So this is a very thin line, very safe play, that who needs the data and why. So that there will be proper authentication framework, approval framework. One of the frameworks that has worked for me all the time is you have this, you take this data democratization layer separate out of your data management and expose the data in the quality levels, in the governed format the way you want, and make it available for 80% of the organization, while 20% of the organization, which comprises of, say, data scientists and very, very focused work, high impact products, bring them onto this original layer of data. So there'll be a low, not the low, but the governed data sets freely available for most of the folks in the organization. But all those teams who are working on, say, IP products, they need to work with the platform teams, with the IT teams, to consume the data from the central locations, the central warehouse or central data lakes. That this is how the framework has worked for me and most of the organizations. That's how you mitigate the risk of exposing a lot more information for to the folks who probably do not need at this point in time. So you see this Mitsubishi, this guy Tap from Merck. What he says that the data management policies, the data cataloging, data dictionary, the fundamental settings is all good, but more the data usage, more they have to look around what are the core, what are the ethical concepts, or say the points they are exposing. And with nowadays, there's a lot of traction picking up on the explainable AI. The AI systems are not not going in the sophistication direction, but they are going more in the fairness direction. So if you are able to explain your AI systems, which are of course built on data, then it is well and good. And otherwise, you never know that if it start acting like a black box, like chatbots, which we often hear in news that Facebook's chatbot talk to each other, and and no one knows why they're talking to each other in language which no one understands. So that's a black box. Okay, you never know what information, what details are they going to expose, which exposes a huge the vulnerability in the systems. So it's better you create simple systems, okay, well authenticated and well supervised, so you have a better control on what you're building and what you're exposing and what someone is using. So it's always good to have that compliance check layer who can approve and certify these systems that okay, these are good to be rolled out in different domains. All right, so all those points that we have covered three critical points: strategy, democratization, and data literacy. We have covered two secondary points: the risk management and this what was that? I forgot. The network effect. Okay, but we know all these things now. Why the data culture is so hard to implement? Why the leadership still faces the problem of data culture, right? So some of the things, some of the challenges that have come out in very open is the broken data strategy. The data quality is bad and there is no governance. So no one wants to use this data. All right, I understand my organizations has terabytes of data, but the quality is so bad that I will spend more time in working on the quality, in fixing the quality, and end of the day I would I wouldn't be making any decisions. That is where the data strategy plays that role. So when you start with the data strategy, the top focus is on the governance. You need to probably build some data steward roles, data governance roles, and you need to put up the systems to who measure the quality of data. So this is how, how do you build trust on data? Okay, so this is one reason why putting up the or say building the data culture becomes so hard. Second is lack of leadership alignment. Okay, so I told in the starting, all the you all are motivated to set up the data culture, but your peers are not aligned. They do not understand data is the strategic asset. They do not understand that how the data products and AI exercises, AI transformation can bring in the change in the way they run the business, not just optimization, but probably opening new avenues of the business things, business KPIs and the business direction. And they fail to build the business strategies with data. So how do we are going to solve it? Probably need to spend a lot more time with these, with your peers, with the people up, and the second layer below you to align them on the data, to educate and to coach them on how to use data, how to work with the data. No knowledge on the data. So very straightforward. If there is no knowledge on data, you train them on how to use data, plus how is the data spread in the organization is. So make them aware. This is again a big challenge. So one of the cases that we did was not just that, the tie up with things like Coursera, Udemy, and there are a lot more learning courses which are coming up every day in, day out. It's not just that helps, but curating some of the data enablement programs internally, which speak the voice of the organizational data spread, is also an important aspect. Make the people aware on how to access data, how the data is organized, how the data is aligned. Is it business aligned? Is it technically aligned? How it is done? That awareness has to be there with the organization. Break the data silos, of course, not a good thing to do, not a good scenario to have, that if you have the data residing in silos, not connected to the cross organizational data, and access request takes ages. That connects back to our enterprise data strategy, but still worthy enough to be highlighted separately, because if as a data scientist, if I'm stuck with a data ask, a data need, and it's taking ages, it's going to impact the data initiatives, the data product project initiatives. It does. Okay, it's a big problem. So better when we start planning the data strategy along with the governance and fixing the quality, the data processes also need to be taken care, so that we do not leave any of the system aside and okay, we are going to pick you later. But and the access request should not be a very complex process in the organization. It has to be more simplified. Make sure you put checks and balances at the right levels, should not be a blocker, should be just be a stage that needs to cross through, and people are confident that okay, they can get access to the data. Now let's have a reality check. With all these good things, simple strategies, practical strategies being talked about, let's do a reality check. We are standing in 2021. I was referring to this report before. There are only 24% of the organizations who have successfully forged data culture. Okay, and this number has gone down. In 2020, this number was 26.8. Okay, so that shows the reality, the challenges, which was just one slide in this deck, is way more powerful than what we just talked about. So we know that we can educate people. We know we can strategize to build data strategy. We know this, we can roll out the products to explore and exploit the data, but it's not easy. Okay, so there's a factor of resistance that comes out, and there's a struggle that goes through, and that reflects in these numbers. 30% have well articulated data strategy, and then only 24% again, which is way down than what the number was in 2020. They have accepted that they have been able to build data driven organization. And the reason of all these low numbers you see in the bottom, the culture, the data culture is one single problem that has been consistently coming up in the surveys, in the feedbacks, in the interviews since last 4 years. And it has only been rising with each and every year. 2018, the number was 80.9. And now in 2021, that has gone to 92%. 92% organizations accept that cultural resistance, the culture, is the biggest challenge to be a data-driven company. And by no mean I'll say that okay, these organizations who are saying that culture is a problem, they have not tasted success. They have done, but still it is in very cornered teams, very central teams, or particular in numbers teams who have built data products and transformed. The culture is a much wider concept. Okay, the culture, it includes, or say entails, the entire organization, entails the entire workforce. Are they equipped? Are they part of your data journey? That is a question that needs to be answered. And 92%, and I hope this number sees a downside in the coming time, because if the culture doesn't transforms, culture doesn't accept the usage of data, it's going to be a tedious task. And my personal vision is that we are going to dilute the role of data leadership. I know it's a big statement to make, but I have personally experienced with my connects in the data, who are the chief data officers and chief AI officers. They have struggled to set up the roles and responsibilities. They've struggled to set up the priorities. And what concerns me, that if after 10 years of journey in the data, if there's still confusion around what these data leadership is going to do, and there's so much of variance in the industry, I'm sure this role gets diluted, is going to dilute, and gets clubbed with the existing roles, and which is the gray zone, which is really difficult to see, and it's going to be a problem if we do not solve this culture problem. So people do have opinions, perspectives, but end of the day, we need a central backbone who takes a strategic look on the data and takes the organizations forward. With this, I have come to the end of the session. I have just included one data blueprint, which which precisely connects the dots of data in the organization. Uh, I'm sure you are going to get this deck, so I'm not going to explain this from start to end, but this is how the flow of data looks like. So I have consolidated all the terms that you might have heard by now. You have the data defense. A section of this blueprint talks about data defense, how to bring in the single source of truth. And then you have the data offense, how to create multiple versions of truth, how to bring in the sophistication, how to experiment, how to set up the data experimentation labs, how to do the transformation, and the bottom you see how the data organization evolves over the time from system of records to data products. What are the target personas that will be the beneficiaries for each and every layer, and what are the use cases that one can achieve, one can undertake or say exercise at each and every layer, from business transactions to the transformation with the product and the platform mindset, the valorization of data and AI, and how it impacts the business KPIs. So that's precisely the blueprint in an organization looks like. And well, I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you for hearing me out. Okay. And what I emphasized upon that data culture, it appears to be at the first place, it appears to be quite a softer concept. And I've seen practical leaders who will bring in the right leadership or right people at the roles, and they expect sometimes too much from those roles. And what they lack to understand is that the problem is not going to solve by bringing in a chief data officer or the chief data and analytics officer. The problem of data culture is not a prerogative of one single role, one single title, but it's the entire organization that has to stand aligned with the data initiatives, data thought process of the organization. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saurabh.
Excellent.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Saurabh.
Saurabh. And your insights about the data culture and how to roll out this data culture in any enterprise organization, and the challenges about while executing these kind of data cultural change, and the resistance and the risks. All these things you have touched very nicely, and these topics are very important for any organization. And yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to demonstrate these capabilities to Seattle audience.
Jagan, I have a question. Do we have some time for questions?
Yes, now we have a question.
There, maybe we should start with Brett, because it looked like he had a question about what is the biggest risk or risks in implementing data strategies in organizations.
Right. So the data strategies in the organization, there are multiple ways. So if the data strategies in the organization, they fail to evolve. When I say evolve, there are 2 points that have to be connected. One is the IT aspect of data strategy, how you are going to consolidate, where you're going to store. The second piece is the business context. So content is the king, but the context is the god, is what I say. Okay, so you have the content, you have the volumes of data, but if you fail to bring in the context of business, that is where most of the data strategies fail. So if I'm able to, say with the stamp saying that, okay, my data strategy is all good, very certified, well reviewed, validated by multiple, industry folks and analyst, but if I fail to connect with the business, that's where the data strategies fail.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Saurabh, for the clarification. And now, Mithun, do you have any question?
Yes, Saurabh, thank you very much for your time. Really good presentation. So I've experienced many of these problems before, right? The key thing for data democratization is it requires a lot of investment before we actually see value. Or has your experience been different? So is there a way to iterate on democratization so that we see value while we are investing? Is there a way to do that?
I agree. So, and one of the points, first of all, thanks for asking this question. Great question. And one of the things that I spoke is when you are on your way to democratize data and establish this state of democracy, there has to be a natural path of evolution. You can, of course, not start with the cascading heavy and beast like products in the employee base and people who are actually working with the data day in day out. and start training them. This is, of course, I wouldn't say should be the starting point. The starting point should be where should you start? Okay, who are the people who will bet up, whom you can bet upon to work with data? Right now, there could be only 10 who are systematically responsible to play around with the data, but there'll be 50 more who are enthusiastic but not at the right level to play with the data. And the problem they're facing is not the data knowledge, not the products to explore. The problem they're facing is accessibility of the data,
That's right.
right? The effort is to find those 50 heads who are enthusiastic to work on data and make the data available to them. They will pick up and run on themselves. That should be the starting point, and that's what we do. We need to find out who are those people who are worthy enough, first of all, who have the right mindset of working with the data, and who are self-starters. That's how we start with that's a starting point of democratization. And once we see the traction picking up, there's of course a level of sophistication that has to be brought up. For example, I'll just put up example. Most of the organizations start with the low code platforms. We bring in Power BI, which is a data visualization tool. Okay, so there's of course a debate that why you are pushing data visualization for data democratization. I said this is what you need. You need to get out of the Excel sheets, which has a limitation on the number of rows. You need to get out of the performance of Excel sheets. Okay, so you need to come up with a central tool where people also feel, moved and progressed. That okay, they have moved beyond Excel sheets. They are now able to drag and drop and visualize a good, rich widget. Graphs, and then once you see these tractions picking up, then we plan for a better systems where they can build data products, not just the visualization and reports. So something like the snowflakes of the worlds and Alteryx of the worlds, they can bind multiple data sets together, and they have multiple approaches to expose that information, integration, things, and then data IQ, which is the self-service analytics. So this is the next, and then once they start connecting with the business strategies with data, that is where I'll say utmost nirvana of the data democratization is that now you can rely on your workforce not just to run the aggregations, but also build business strategies with data. So I would say there are three stages. I've spoken in my last conference on the data strategies that you start with as a knife. You just measure the depth, how much is the depth, and then you bring in the sophistication, and then you start asking questions, how much we have moved as a business with these strategies.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so finding the right champion,
Yes.
each of the area is the key there, right?
Yes.
So to make a opening,
Right.
and that's how you drive. Thank you very much.
I think Sharat had a question about is the resistance to data culture due to upfront investment in technology?
Well, I would say yes and no both. The resistance to the data culture because of the investments and budget. Of course, it does requires fuel to build up. Okay, so there is since this is a strategic assets, a strategic direction of the organization, so you do require a budget and investment to work on this. But then no as well, because more than the budget, there has to be an intent. So the win-win situation, or say need ask, should be from both the sides. If I'm pumping in money, I also need to have the people have the layer with an intent of justifying that much of investment. There's no point in time. There's no point in putting in money and you do not have an intent. You'll say that okay, I'll do it later on because the data quality is not at the right level. Data strategy is not robust. So it's better these all things should be supported with the appropriate investment. So of course, for me, the strategy come first. So the 3 points that I talked about, how we are going to do it is way important. Do I have the money to do it or not? So if I have the visibility on what we are going to do it, then of course the investments will follow. I'm sure. So we all are very realistic professionals. When you say something You ask for something, you get at least come down to 50-60% or even more than that. But so that planning has to be done in that way that if I go with full ask how much I'm going to do, how much I'm going to invest, and what will be my strategic distribution across these buckets will be. And if not, then what is my plan B? Then I need to probably go for a second round of prioritization and say that these are the top three things I'm going to do. So it's not a blocker, it's not a resistance, but of course, that this is something that needs to be kept in mind, back of your mind. End of the day, it's a fuel. Okay, so whatever the fuel is, your capacity will be more, but whatever you get, that will define that how far you can go.
Yeah, very good. And Saurabh, I have another question from my side. I know the answer for this question. And since I wanted to ask this question for the audience, they may also they will also be aware of this. So, when we talk about the data culture assessment point of view, there are lots of consulting engagements are happening from a top 5 companies such as McKinsey or Accenture or Deloitte. These kind of companies are taking it place. Are there any such automated tools we can do it recurring basis to assess the data culture where we are, and we can see continuous progress on top of it?
So, great question, Jagan. So the way the assessment is done at this point in time, they're truly the surveys, and I think we need to move beyond the state of surveys and asking questions. Do you know this or not? Okay, if you take up a data culture survey or data literacy survey, it will be a leading question. Okay, and I've gone through a couple of surveys and such engagements. They are leading question: do you know this or not? And now that puts up a thought in your mind: do I really know this or not? Okay, at what level this question has been thrown to you, that are you an expert, are you an intermediate level, or are you just starting? I know this, but is my awareness rightly mapped to the responses or not? That is where I see the gap. So I think the assessments have to move beyond the surveys and has to offer a lot more a product as a product format. The other thing is the assessment is one way as of now. Okay, so it's only a one-way communication. I'm asking the questions and I'm capturing the responses, but that doesn't reflect that what is the true state of data culture is. That will probably help me in saying that, okay, dude, you are bad in this and you have to pick up on particular thing, but that's not the way it works. That has to be more closely knitted with the organizational culture soul, say culture spine. And if you are planning to build the culture grounds up, you need to hear the people out. Okay, you need more than asking the questions, you need to let them, give them the space to ask questions to the leadership. Why you are rolling these data training programs, why you are doing this, is it impacting me or not, is it rightly curated for the needs which I have or not? These are the things which I hugely find it missing. uh, uh, and more than the questionnaire of 25 questions, it has to move out and say that, okay, I need to speak up. And once you speak up, I will extract what I need. And based on that, I will build the strategy to build the data culture, to set up the data culture.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the clarification, Saurabh. Yeah. So any audience, any questions from your side?
Jagan, this is Kalyan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey, Saurabh. My name is Kalyan. I am part of the IoT strategy team at Microsoft. Thanks for taking out time. Great session. I had a quick question following up on Jagan's question. When you think of data democratization and changing the culture, have you seen this work better when a particular enterprise hires external consultants to drive that change versus just leaning only on internal teams to make that happen?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, good question. So with the external consultants coming in to fix the data culture, uh, the deliverable and the priorities are a challenge. Okay, it does sounds good, but that also brings up the fact. that someone who is bringing the external consultants need to have a clear view what we are going to do together, right? So for example, Jagan talked about the assessment. So if you had done the assessment and know that, okay, my data strategy is broken, I need to pick up the pace on data literacy. These are my top two items. My democratization, I can still continue with the, say, tools like the self-service tools for the time being. This is where now you have the utmost clarity. You know that data strategy has to be built, rebuilt, reevaluated, and that will reflect some more line items like data quality, data governance. Now you can bring in external consultants to accelerate this process, okay, which is very well okay. But if you're starting with the data culture initiative program and you bring in the consultants, my fear is you'll invest a lot more lot more money in plus the energies in evaluating, which these people probably do not get the connect with. So if they are not able to connect with the business context, if they are still, it requires a lot of your organizational teams to sit with them, spend time with them, and tell them that, okay, these are my business KPIs, knowing that probably they are going to leave you at certain time or certain period of time. I wouldn't go for that strategy at the first place until unless I know that, okay, these are my 5 priorities, and out of 5, top 2 I'm going to give it to external consultants. By the time I'll insource a team, and by the time I'll work on the 4th priority with my existing team members. And that's how the bifurcation of priorities I'll do, and I'll plan that how which one goes to external consultants versus which one goes to the internal to the organization. And then there is now also the ethical context associated with it. Right now the teams, of course, the external consultants bring in the acceleration, but there is of course a boundary beyond which the organization hesitate to go, because that is the IB for them. And so, yeah, this is where I stand. This is where my response would be. It helps, but it helps up to a level. And that depends on the leadership style and the way you are running these programs. I hope that answers the question. I know this was not a one single straight answer. There's a mixed response from the market, from the industry as well, and it all depends what is the strategic partnership you have with these from the vendors who are bringing in external consultants and their advisors, or their actual doers.
Yep, I think that makes a lot of sense, Saurabh. I think we have seen different scenarios play out with different customers. To your point, there is no one answer. So
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Great. Yeah. So since the time is almost, we are used 1 hour 29 minutes, and if anybody has a questions, please take a real quick. Otherwise, Ethan is going to take the concluding note.
Thanks, Jagan. I think that it's actually very, very good timing. I think we scheduled exactly the right amount of time, evidently, because it's exactly 7:30 now. So any last minute questions, anything else, anything quick anyone can add?
Good.
Okay.
So looks like,
well,
yeah, you can conclude.
yeah. Well,
I would like to add one thing. So,
sure.
Sort of the statistic that you gave, that the industry is only 23% data democratized, or like has reached the data maturity level, makes me feel very good, because that's a lot of job security for people in the data. So it's a good thing for all of us who are attending. That's a stat that I didn't know before this session.
Awesome.
Yeah, see, this is how data makes an impact.
Yeah.
This is how we're able to
Yeah, that's
strike the
exactly right. Data makes the impact, right? Yeah.
Great.
Good thing. Thank you.
Well,
Great.
Thank you very much, Saurabh. Thanks, Jagan, for hosting this, and I think everyone got a lot of very valuable information. And if anything, if anyone has anything that any other questions, they can always just send an email to us, and we can loop back with Saurabh and maybe email back. And in any case, we can also we're also going to send everyone a recording of the right, Jagan?
Yes.
Yeah, the recording of the video. So if there are any because it is 90 minutes. So if there was a moment that you had to step away and maybe miss something, you can always go back to that moment and watch again. So thanks everyone for attending. It's
Yeah. Thank you, Ethan, and thank you, Saurabh, for taking the time to give a demonstration on this topic.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you all.
Jagan, for having me over. Thanks, Ethan, for coordinating this. And thanks, everyone, for hearing me out.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Jagan. Thanks, Saurabh.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Everyone
Bye.
have a nice night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.